This build is Butcher Storm. If you like interesting but playable builds, then you've come to the right place. You might notice that most of the mobs aren't even coming to attack me. That's because this build is decked out with tons of Immobilize and Fear from our Butcher's Cleaver. I'm completely destroying tier 64 content with completely unoptimized gear. I'm missing over 100% damage reduction, and most of my aspects are subpar. But hey, that's what happens when you make a build every couple days. Before we get into the build, here are my ratings by category so that you know what you're getting into. Single target DPS in this build is a little bit lacking, but it's not too bad once you learn how to optimize your lightning strikes. This build has some of the best AoE in the game. There's nothing particularly special about the survivability in this build, but the sheer amount of CC means you don't have to rely on your defenses nearly as much. The mobility in this build is very low, and you'll often find yourself standing in one place. With optimized gear, I feel like this build could easily push towards tier 100. The build's extremely easy to play at a basic level, but optimizing your lightning strikes and knowing when to channel versus spam your button can take some time to get used to. I should also note that there's a weird bug when you're spam clicking your lightning storm and then you dash, you'll be rooted in place and unable to cast your lightning storm for a couple of seconds. Learning how to work around this is part of the difficulty. Alright, let's get into the build. For our skills, we're using Blood Howl, Cyclone Armor, Hurricane, Grizzly Rage, Wind Shear, and Lightning Storm. For our spirit boons, we're using Wariness, Avian Wrath, Calamity, Masochistic, and Calm Before the Storm. For our items, we're using Tempest Roar and the Butcher's Cleaver. For our aspects, we're using Vigorous, Lightning Dancer, Disobedience, Shared Misery, Retaliation, Direwolf, Rampaging Werebeast, and Mighty Storm. For our gems, we're using Emerald on the weapon, Ruby on the armor, and Skulls on the jewelry. For our skill tree, we're taking Wind Shear and Fierce Wind Shear. For our core skill, we're taking Lightning Storm and Primal Lightning Storm. We're also going to max out Wild Impulses. For our defensive skills, we're taking Cyclone Armor and Preserving Cyclone Armor, as well as Blood Howl and Innate Blood Howl. In addition, we're maxing out Vigilance. Under our companion tree, we're maxing out Nature's Reach. In our Wrath tree, we're grabbing Hurricane and Savage Hurricane. We'll be maxing out Envenom and taking 1 point of Toxic Claws. We're also going to max out Elemental Exposure, Endless Tempest, Bad Omen, and Electric Shock. For our ultimate, we're taking Grizzly Rage and both additional points. We're also maxing out Defiance and Natural Disaster. For our Keystone passive, we're taking Earth and Might. For our Paragon boards, I'll pause for a moment on each one and tell you what glyph we'll be using. For the starter board, we're using Exploit. The first additional board we're grabbing is Heightened Malice, and we'll be grabbing Fang and Claw here. To the left, the second board we'll be grabbing is Thunderstruck. Here we'll be grabbing Fulminate. Back across to the right, we'll be grabbing Ancestral Guidance. And here we're grabbing Werewolf. Above our Thunderstruck board, we'll be taking Lust for Carnage. And on this board, we're taking Tracker. I also considered taking Spirit here, but we hit our critical damage cap with Grizzly Rage fairly easily. For our gear stats, on the pants, we're taking damage reduction from distant enemies, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, damage reduction while injured, and maximum life. You can also take total armor instead of damage reduction while injured. For our rings, we're using vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, critical strike chance, and maximum life. For our offhand, we're taking spirit cost reduction, cooldown reduction, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, and critical strike chance. For our chest armor, we're taking damage reduction from distant enemies, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, maximum life, and some form of damage reduction or total armor. For our boots, we're taking spirit cost reduction, total armor while in werewolf form, damage reduction while injured, and dodge chance against distant enemies. On our gloves, we're taking ranks of Lightning Storm, critical strike chance, lightning critical strike damage, and lucky hit or all stats. For our amulet, we're taking ranks of the Envenom passive, cooldown reduction, spirit cost reduction, and total armor while in werewolf form. There are many good stats on the amulet, so keep your eyes out for anything that works for you. And that's the build. I'm gonna give this build a solid 6.9 out of 10. Heyo! If you like my content, drop me a sub and join us in the Discord. I'm also probably live on Twitch right now, so go check it out. I'll see you there.